Hey, I'm Felix, and today I'm going to be talking about liminal identity, or why I identify as queer, rather than something more specific. So, for context, liminal means between spaces. It can mean between two categories, like in the middle. It can mean between in time, like changing from one to another. Liminal is used in folklore and some other similar places to talk about the boundaries of things. And the reason I'm using it in this video is because it really gets at my experience of queerness, which is not being quite one thing and not being quite another. And our culture really likes binaries. They like for something to be one thing or another. And these two things are thought as diametrically opposed, and never the twain shall meet. So, male and female are binaries. So there's the idea that there's only two of them, and they're opposed, and you're either one or the other. Another binary is trans and cis. Like, if you're not trans, then you're cis, and if you're not cis, then you're trans. And then there's straight and gay. I think all of those binaries are oversimplifications of the incredible diversity of human experience. And if you watch my videos, that's going to be a theme. And I don't fit them, and it makes me angry, and also it makes my life really confusing. So, let me talk about that. My experience is incomprehensible, even and especially to myself. Like, what the hell am I feeling at any given point? I don't know. It takes me 2 months, on average, to figure out if the emotion I am experiencing is a crush or not. I'm like, oh, I'm having an emotion. It takes me 2 months to figure out what the fuck that emotion is. So, the split attraction model of sexual orientation that talks about, oh, sexual attraction versus romantic attraction versus sensual attraction or whatever, that doesn't work for me because I don't easily distinguish between different types of attraction. I don't even distinguish between romantic and non-romantic attraction very well. I'm bad at it. So any kind of specific sexuality is not going to be within reach for me because it's just not accessible. In high school, I was sometimes presenting and dressing as a girl, and I went by a feminine name, and other times I was presenting and dressing as a boy, and I had a boy name, and I didn't know that was a thing that people could do. I just did it, and the closest thing that I was aware of to that was drag, so I called myself a drag king. If I had been in high school even 5 years ago, I probably would have known the word gender fluid, but I didn't then. 9 years ago? 9 years ago, I didn't, that wasn't the thing that I was aware of, so I didn't use it. But it took me from 15 to 21 to realize that, hey, maybe something's going on with my gender. That wasn't even on the radar, because I didn't understand my own feelings and what those meant. My gender and my orientation have been fluid throughout my life, so I don't feel comfortable in either of the binaries for that reason either. Like, okay, I was gender fluid in high school, now I am none of those things. I'm not a girl, I'm not a boy, and I'm not gender fluid. I am concretely and always non-binary now. So obviously that's changed, and other trans people this isn't necessarily their experience, but I don't necessarily think that I have been non-binary my whole life. And maybe I have. Again, I don't understand my own feelings very well. But basically, my entire history of queerness has been a battle between external pressures to be cis, straight, a girl, feminine, all that stuff, and internal pressures of saying, hey, I actually am not straight, and I'm feeling dysphoria, and I'm also non-binary. And these two pressures meet in the middle, and they create a wonderful, horrible baby, which is imposter syndrome. When I was first discovering my queerness, half the time I was like, I'm just a lesbian in denial, and the other half of the time I'm like, I'm just straight and I just want to be special. And like, if I'm feeling both those things, obviously neither of them are correct, but it's not logical, it's just shitty. And then when I was coming to terms with my gender, half the time I'm like, oh, maybe I'm just a trans guy who doesn't want to be a man because I don't want to face up to my male privilege. And the other half of the time I'm just like, I'm just a cis girl who wants to be special. And it's like, the same thing is happening again. And it's stupid. And I shouldn't believe it, but I do anyway. And it's horrible. What do I mean when I say that my sexual orientation, or my orientation in general, is just queer? What I mean by that is that queer communicates something useful about my sexuality to other people. And it helps me find people who experience similar things. Specifically, it means that I am not heterosexual. I have identified as a lesbian before, and eventually I stopped identifying as a lesbian because, for one thing, I'm not a girl, and there are some non-binary lesbians, and that's cool. I'm not one of them. But also, I'm not solely attracted to women, and the people who I'm attracted to would not universally enjoy being grouped with women. And technically I am bisexual, but I don't identify with the term because although the definition of bisexual is attraction to people of two or more genders, which is true, I'm attracted to women and people of various non-binary genders, so that would fit, but in practice, if 98% of the people that I come out to are going to assume that bisexual means attracted to men and women, then I don't want to use that word because it's not accurate for me. I'm not, generally speaking, attracted to men, and I don't want to be using an orientation word that doesn't get across the things that I think are important about my sexuality. So if people are going to be assuming something that is not true every time I come out, then that's a problem. I don't want to have to explain it every time I come out, and then I'm going to have to argue with people on what the definition of bisexual is. It's just a mess, and I don't want to deal with it. So I use queer because it gets to the point, and it also allows me to have this uncertainty and this fluidity that I do experience. But I also identify as genderqueer for kind of similar reasons. My identity is fluid in the past, and it might be in the future as well. Specifically, I identify as trans and non-binary, but genderqueer was really the first gender word that I found, and I really liked it, and I don't use it as much anymore because it is often used as an umbrella phrase that includes a lot of experiences that I don't share, or it includes experiences that I think most people, if you say the word genderqueer, are going to assume that they just mean gender non-conforming, which is true, but because the most salient part of my gender experience is that I'm not a man and I'm not a woman, and I don't want to be categorized with either of those people. I mean, dude, there are awesome men and there are awesome women, and that's awesome if you're one of them, but I'm not, and it's very important to me that people understand that, because I'm done with this shit. I'm done being misgendered. So that was my really long YouTube video about how I'm a queer cryptid, basically, because not everyone's sure that I exist, and people like to argue with me even when I show up. But anyway, so if you feel like you are also a queer cryptid, or if you identify with the idea of liminal identity in any way, please leave a comment and let's talk about it, because I think it's very useful. I think it can be used in a lot of other contexts that are not just this. So I'm sure that a lot of you feel the same way, so let's feel better about ourselves together. Thanks for listening. If you like this video, please leave a like, comment, maybe subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Bye. But not bye, really queer.